Hi guys, so welcome to our introduction to Python video tutorials. In the introduction to data science aspect of this video, where we're trying to get into data science, but we understand that writing Python is one of the basic foundation for making your way through data science. We have a bunch of video tutorials for this introductory part to Python, so you could just check it out if this is your first time on this channel. Like, subscribe, and share to your friends and enemies. It's really an important skill to have. So, what are Python lists? So, they're basically four built-in data types in Python, and they are used to store and access data. So these data types lets you store information in them in different ways, different formats, and at the same time you can access them based on a set of rules. And the Python list is one of this data type. It can also be called a data structure based on the rules and the manner the kind of objects that the lists contain. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share a few of the characteristics, and then we can go ahead and create a Python list. Right now, so one important thing about a Python list is that it is mutable. So first off, we're going to start off with one characteristics. It is mutable. Now, for it to be mutable, it means that the data you collect inside of it can be changed, it can be modified. So that means I can basically say this is changeable and modifiable. Let me see, can I use this? Is modifiable the correct way to write this? Okay, whatever the case, you get it, but it's modifiable. So let me make this a little bit. Yes, excellent. So a list, the Python list is modifiable. Now, another thing about a list, it's the elements inside of a list. The elements inside of a list, because a list has elements inside of them. They have data types, different objects inside a list, and these elements can have different data types too. So that means elements inside a list have different data types. So that means a list can hold different data types. Right. Now, there's also another interesting characteristic of a list, which is a list is sequential. So that means for every element inside the list, there's a number attached to it. Right, so that makes it easy for you to access the elements inside the list using index, using numbers. Right, so we're going to show you that as we move down the list. So you can see a list is sequential. It's sequential. Right, so we have three things already about a list. We can see that it is mutable. You can change and you can modify elements that are already inside the list. And elements inside the list have different data types. They can have a different data types, and the list is sequential. So there are a bunch of things that you can do with the list. Another thing is when creating a list, which this is important, you create a list using square brackets. Look at that, square brackets. Initially I talked about the four built-in data types, right? You can now find out that these four built-in data types have different ways you create them. You're going to see a square bracket, you're going to see the round bracket, you're going to see curly braces. All these are there, right? So a square bracket is used, to indicate that a list is being created. And of course, the elements inside of a list are comma separated. So what we're going to do first is that we are going to create a list. So we're going to call this, no, hold on. We're going to create a list. So I'll put this on Markdown. Right, so it looks good. Excellent. Now, so we're going to create a list. Right, so what are we going to call this list when we create it? Okay, so again, there are several ways to create a list. So we're going to look at these different ways to create a list. So first, we're going to create a list with different elements. So I'll call this lists underscore elements. Of course, we put the assignment operator, which by virtue of our the basics we've been learning, the assignment operator and the creation of variables, fundamental to learning Python programming. Now, the first we do is we're going to have a square bracket, which is that, and then we can now input the elements inside of our list. So first, I will start off by putting a name. I'll say Pablo. I can put in a year, say 2023. I could put in a month, say April. I could put in a Boolean value. I could say true. I could put in number. I could say 456. And funny thing is, a list can also have another list inside of it. So that's really cool. But let's just stick with the basic stuff right now. So basically, this list has been created, and if I print it, if I print a string lists underscore elements, you see now I have all this inside of it. Right, so you see that's basically straightforward way of creating a list. Now, another way we can create a list, so I like to document stuff like this. So we can have another way to create a list. I'll use the Markdown. Yes. Now we use a list function. It's called a list function. Right. So what this means is you can have maybe a series of characters, a single character, and just like a string, and then you can use the list function to convert it from a string into a list. Right. So I'll show you how that works. Say for instance, I have a set of characters like this, and this is called a set of characters. Right. Did I spell that correctly? Hold on. Again, let me give this set underscore car. So this is what I'm going to call this. A set of characters. Here we go. So we assign this the variable set underscore car. Now we now have set underscore car, and then if we want to understand the data type, we use the type class or function, and then we write set car, and then we see that we have a string. Now what we can do is we can now use the list function. So here again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this list underscore set underscore car underscore list, just so you guys can see the intuitive nature for which I create the variable names. And then I'm going to use the list function. You can see that this is the list function. Then there's a because of course it has a rounded bracket, and then inside of it I put the set underscore car, and I put this. Now if I now check the type for set underscore car underscore list, and what I have is a list, right? And so you see, just like this, I'm going to print to stream, and then set underscore. Yeah, so you see what this was. It was a set of characters. And so see what happens now. So you see A, there's a space, then a set of characters. You can see everything plus all the space that is in this have all been broken down into single elements inside of a list. Right, so classic stuff. Just so you know, that's another way to have that created. Another one final thing you can do with the list is you can create an empty list, right? And this, you can call this, you know, okay, let me just say this, create an empty list, right? And then let me just make this, let me document this, right? So you can see that I'll call this empty underscore list and assign this with a square bracket. And with that, you can see what I have here is an empty list. If I call this, I have an empty list. One last way to do this, and this is the last, and I promise, is that I can still say empty underscore list one, and I will create an empty list by simply calling the list function, right? And then when I check empty list one, boom. So yeah, so this is like the basic ways to create a Python list, right? So take your time, watch this video over and over again for you to get a sense of what it is. Here I showed you guys different characteristics of a Python list, and it's important that you get to understand how it is created and what they do. Their characteristics are important. In the next video, we're going to look at methods, the methods you use to manipulate a list. Again, take your time, watch this video, like, subscribe in case I create more videos, video tutorials, share and subscribe, share with your friends and enemies. It is important to learn these basic Python skills, one object at a time.